Hey, what's up, guys? John here. I'm sitting here with Jeremy Lee Miner, and he's what I would consider probably the top sales trainer. You're going to see him all over social media. He's teaching a lot of people about how to grow their businesses, how to grow their sales teams. He's giving a lot of value, and right now we're in the greatest wealth transfer, I believe, in American history. In the next couple of years, people that are building out their sales teams, people that are making the right decisions are going to make a fortune. They're going to be able to go out there and buy a lot of assets, and they're going to do extremely well. So thanks for coming on, Jeremy.
John, thanks for having me on your show. I'm going to take all of that as a compliment because my kids say I'm very boring. Do you say that to every sales training company that comes in here?
You're actually the only one that
You're
we've
too
had.
kind. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting what you just said, because, I've got a keynote here for a big mortgage company here in town tomorrow. And I'm going to talk about, how do you become the trusted authority in your prospect's mind? Like, what sets you apart from anybody else? Because everything that's sold, like every salesperson, every company says what? We're the number one. We've got the best this. We've got the best that. So in your prospect's mind, you all sound the same. Even if you are the number one in the market, your prospects, they don't really believe that because every salesperson says they are, right? Like, How many salespeople have ever sold you anything and said, "Hey, John, we're the eighth best in the market."
Right.
Nobody does, right? They all say they're the best. So I'm going to talk tomorrow about the ones who are going to own this upcoming market. I think this is a good leadway, are the ones who simply know or simply learn how to best communicate with their prospects. That's who's going to own this market.
What do you think is one of the best ways to communicate with your prospect if you don't have the authority with them just yet?
The authority can be built. It's called situational status or situational authority. My background is behavioral science and social dynamics. And in social dynamics, you learn about like status, like rank framing and status framing, things like that. There's a book, what's his name? Orrin Claff talks about it, Pitch Anything. It's a really good book. You should read. He does financial capital raising and stuff. And I don't know if he has a background in social dynamics or whatever, but he talks about like status framing or rank framing. So in society, let's say if I'm in the Polynesian Islands 1,000 years ago, how would somebody view my status? Well, in that society, they view your status based on what type of tattoos you had on your body, right? If I was in medieval Europe, 1,500 years ago, they might view your status based on if you were a lord or like a duke or whatever, right? Or king or queen, obviously. How do people view status in our day and age? Your wealth and usually social media followers or both, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean you can't be a salesperson or a business that's unknown, right? That comes in and within 5 minutes, because of the questions you ask and how you use your tone, you actually raise your status in the prospect's mind. That's called situational status, where in that situation, the prospect views you as like an authority or a much higher status with what you're talking about. You don't have to be a billionaire, but they start to view you as like, oh, that person actually knows a lot about this. I need to pay attention.
Right. So what was your first sales job?
So my first sales job was when I was in college. This was the summer of 2000. I'm that old, I know. Summer of 2000, I got my first job selling home security systems door to door. And I went to school out in Utah. My major was behavioral science and, like I said, social dynamics and stuff, just boring nerd stuff. But that's where I got my start. I was 21 years old.
And when you were making commissions, what was the following sales job? What did you learn there, and how did that kind of segue to where you are right now?
I stayed in that industry even after school for 5 years, and I kind of got bored. Did some would say exceptionally well in that industry, but then I got into B2B sales, like enterprise, SMB and enterprise, and I sold debt relief services.
Yeah,
did that for 5.5 years. Next industry I got into was network marketing. I was in there for about 5 years or so, did really well in there. And then the last industry I got into before I started 7th Level, I was selling like high ticket, like e-commerce packages, like 50 to 100 grand to investors and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because at the end of the day, right now, a lot of people are looking for ways in which, sales cures all problems.
Yeah.
Like if you have a good product, a good service, you have good people behind you, and you're selling, you're going to be able to sell your way out of the problem.
Here's what I always say, like, everybody on this planet, so 1 out of every 8 people that walk on planet Earth have a sales job where they're paid something because of a sale. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of people. However, the other 7 are actually in sales too. I call that non-sales selling, right? Because if you're like an entrepreneur like you are, and you're trying to get your employees to follow your vision of where you want to go with your business, what are you trying to do? You're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence, you're trying to move others, right? If you're an employee, trying to convince your boss to give you a pay raise, you're trying to persuade, you're trying to influence. If you're a teacher trying to convince your kids to do their homework, you're trying to persuade. Everybody's in sales. Everybody is out there every single day trying to persuade, influence, and they're trying to move others to their way of thinking. You're an attorney trying to convince the jury that your client's innocent. It's the same thing. Politicians trying to convince people to vote for them. It's the same thing. Everybody's in sales.
Today's video is sponsored by GreatCreditFast. Do you want to invest in real estate or possibly Airbnb? Maybe you want to start and grow a company or a business or possibly get debt free. With great credit, you're able to achieve all of this and much, much more. The last thing that you want to do is borrow money from a credit card company paying 25 or 27% interest, because when you look at the real numbers and you look at what's actually happening in the economy, that's the worst strategy and it's almost a guaranteed failure. Take a look at this. So if you're borrowing $10,000 at a 27% interest rate, paying $250 a month, it's going to take about 9 years to pay this off and about $16,000 in wasted resources paid to one of these credit card companies. However, with great credit, you're able to do a balance transfer in most cases and get debt free for 0% interest and pay this off in a fraction of the time. In 2008, banks started tightening up lending restrictions, and that's exactly what they are doing now. They're getting ready to tighten up lending restrictions, meaning that if you have that low credit score, 400, 500, 600 credit score, if you're in that even low 700s, it becomes much more challenging to get access to money. But if you look at Blackstone, for example, Blackstone, they are using their credit and their relationships to raise money. They've just raised $30 billion to invest in single family rentals. If you want to invest in real estate, you want to really grow in scale during the greatest wealth transfer of all time, you're going to need great credit to do it. We would love to give you a free consultation to see how we can help you at GreatCreditFast.com. That's GreatCreditFast.com, or give us a call at 561-430-5900. Now back to the show.
What do you think is one of the easiest ways to kind of open up a sale?
As far as like inbound, outbound?
Like, let's say, for example, you mentioned a politician.
Yeah.
If you were a politician, you were trying to win over, mass market.
Yeah.
What would be the way you go about that?
The thing that politicians are interesting, their communication style is like, I'm not into politics, but I love watching how people communicate. And I'd say politicians are probably some of the worst communicators out there, because what they do is they try to the Democrats are evil, and the Democrats are like, Republicans are, the MAGA are horrible people, whatever. And I'm like, you're just alienated half of the people.
Right.
Like, if you're trying to move other people over to your way of thinking, Steve, the late Stephen Covey says it's best. He says best, first seek to understand and then be understood. So if you generally try to understand somebody else's point of view that has a different point of view than you do, they typically will start to become more open to your way of thinking as well. But if you sit there and you, let's say I'm a Republican, for example, and I'm an independent, I don't even vote sometimes, I'm just kind of like, I'm just right in the middle. You guys fight it all out. But like, if let's say I'm a Republican and I'm trying to win over some of the Democratic base to my side, I don't want to sit there and be like, the Democrats are this and the Democrats are that, because you're labeling all of those voters as bad.
Right.
I would more do that to the individual person, not Democrats or Republicans in general, because you're just making the other side dig in their heels and get defensive even more. Like, how many friends I have friends that sometimes I put them on snooze for 30 days on social media, on Facebook, because when the voting happens,
they start getting crazy.
Crazy, posting like, oh, Trump said this or Biden said this. And they're like, everybody's from Satan, on the other side. The world's going to end if he gets elected. Democracy's over. I'm like, probably not, but I'm sure it'll be the same in 4 years from now. A few things might change. I doubt it's going to be over. But have you ever seen where they start arguing with people in the comments?
Oh, yeah.
How many of those people that were Republicans, became Democrats because of the argument? Zero.
Right.
You're just, or vice versa. You're just making them dig their heels and defend their position even more. Mm-hmm. You literally are just wasting time trying to prove your point. You can prove your point, but that doesn't mean you're going to move the person over to your way of thinking. More than likely, it's actually going to do the exact opposite.
Yeah, I think a lot of people experienced that in 2020, 2021, when they were like, all those big events one after the next.
Yeah.
Everyone had their opinion about everything, and all they did was basically divide their relationships, and a lot of those relationships still didn't recover. But
Yeah,
those
it's
that
just-
actually know how to communicate and that can
if you're
move with it,
hey, if
they're-
you're open to listening to somebody and their point of view, because everybody has different point of views, and it all comes from like the way you're raised, maybe what part of the country you grew up in, maybe your economic conditions, like your religious beliefs. Like everybody's going to have different beliefs based on those. And I doubt there's like, I always say that to me the truth is in the middle. I don't know, like it's like not all this side, or I think there's great things from both sides, you know. So the truth is always in the middle to me.
Yeah, as well said. I mean, like I don't ever talk about anything political, like
Yeah, I
just
don't
in
either.
general, because
We got clients that are Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, all sorts of parties.
Yep.
We're just a sales training company that trains you how to sell more.
trying to help you move forward in life. Yeah.
Exactly, you know, like you guys can duke out the politics.
Yeah. So when you're building out, let's say, for example, you're building out a sales team and you're trying to help somebody kind of move up to the next level, what does that first hire look like for somebody that, you know, they're looking to hire their first sales guy?
Well, you want to be able to set up your salespeople to succeed. So many companies will hire salespeople thinking like, oh, you know, we're always going to have to get rid of the bottom 20%. But that's really the company's fault, because selling is an acquired skill. You know, I wasn't born out of my mother's womb with advanced questioning skills. Anybody watching here born out of your mother's womb with advanced questioning skills? I wasn't born out of my mother's womb with advanced tonality skills. I definitely was not born out of my mother's womb with advanced objection handling and prevention skills. I had to acquire those skills. I had to learn those skills. That means anybody can learn those skills. You're not born as a salesperson. It's an acquired skill. Doesn't matter if you're extroverted, introverted, ambivert, whatever is in the middle, it's an acquired skill. So as a company, if your position is like, oh, we're always going to have to, you know, 20, 30% we're going to have to get rid of.
Yeah, I always hear that
That's
people
just
say
being
every
lazy
quarter they just try to
because
whack
you
the
don't
bottom
know
10 or
how
20.
to train them. All they have to have is the right training, and you can quite literally have anybody. We've taken salespeople that literally were like at the bottom of a pack of companies that have 5,000 salespeople that within 6 months to a year are like the number one salesperson in the entire company, because we taught them the right skills. And now they know how to work with human behavior rather than work against it. We focus on selling as a skills game, whereas most companies focus on as a numbers game. And that's a big issue.
Yeah.
Because when you instill in your salespeople's mind that sales is a numbers game, they're just going to go through the motions. They're going to sound like scripted robots because they're just like numbers, get as many no's as I can to get that yes. But what's your favorite sport? Let me give you an
Skateboarding.
Okay,
So
I can't use skateboard. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody in skateboard. Like a big sport. What's a favorite big sport?
Yeah.
Don't say skateboarding.
Yeah, I would say football.
Okay, so football. Who's your favorite player?
Actually, no, I'm going to switch to basketball. And I would
Okay,
probably
NBA.
go like, yeah.
Steph Curry.
Okay.
Imagine if Steph Curry said that basketball is a numbers game.
Right.
Shoot as many threes as you can. Eventually you'll hit one.
Right.
Just shoot it. It's just a numbers game. Just shoot as many.
Just practice.
He would have never made a high school varsity team, let alone the NBA. No, Steph knows that basketball is a skills game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why every day you see him out focused on the skill level. He's working on his technique, his, you know, maybe how he jumps or his wrist movements or where his elbows lined up or how he's dribbling. He's focused on the skills game. And because he's focused on the quality of each shot, that's why he gets paid tens of millions of dollars a year, which he should.
Yeah.
Salespeople who are focused on the skills game will always outsell salespeople who are focused on the numbers game, because they are working on their skill level on every single call and like weeding out what they're doing wrong and implementing things that they're to do right. And each quality of each conversation goes up, closing percentages go way up, lead cost goes way down for companies. And it just, I hate the numbers game mentality. Any sales trainer out there that says, oh, sales is a numbers game, just, you know, work harder, call more leads. I'm like, that's just like them saying like, what I'm training you doesn't really work that well. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to work harder. I'm like, how does that give you any competitive advantage? You're just going to work more hours. You already work 8 to 12 hours a day. You're going to work 16 hours a day. You're going to burn out.
Yep.
And that's why sales has one of the highest attrition rates of any profession, because they're constantly, you know, they're using these techniques that are just so old school that just cause prospects to run the other way. And psychologically, most people can't keep doing that year.
What are
after
some of
year.
the worst techniques that you've thought of or that you've seen that people think are good today?
Jeez, they're so bad. calling a prospect, hey, John, saw you responded to my ad. Hey, do you have 2 minutes we can talk? No prospect believes you're only going to take 2 minutes of their time. It's just a weird way to say it. Now, I might relanguage that. Hey, John, you responded to an ad. You asked us to call you back about, let's say, what is your business? What do you do?
Credit repair.
Oh, credit repair. Looks like you responded to an ad about looking at ways to like fix your credit so you could get a new home, right? Yeah, right. Okay. I just had a couple minutes to get a hold of you before my next appointment. And then you go into it. That's a better way to relanguage it because I just had a few minutes to get to you before my next appointment. You must be busy. You got lots of clients. You got people to talk to. So it's a better way to reword it. Just things like that. Being assumptive too early in the conversation is a big cause of prospects going into fight or flight mode because you have zero trust and credibility and you're like assuming the sale in the first like 2 minutes. When you have zero trust and credibility, you're going to trigger a lot of sales resistance. So I want to be more neutral, like unbiased, like, you might not even need us. I'd have to know more. And that causes the prospect to let their guard down.
Yep. And then they're trying to sell themselves as to why they're a fit for your service or product.
Yeah. Well, it's, here's what I always say. Who has the problems? The prospect or the salesperson?
It's the prospect.
Who has a solution to solve those?
The salesperson.
The salesperson. So why are you trying to qualify and convince the prospect when they're the ones that have the problems that you can solve? Like, I'm going to get the prospect to qualify to me. Now, that doesn't mean being a douche and getting on there and be like, well, at the end of the call, if I feel you're a good fit for what we do, then we'll show you the next steps. Nobody believes that. Like, consumers are not dumb. You're only going to get the laydowns. Yeah. Oh, it's so retarded. Hey, I'm ready to pay. Nope, sorry, you're not a good fit for us. Like, that's just bullshit. Like, nobody believes that. So when you say things like that, you'll have some prospects that will be like, yeah, okay, but instantly, you just lost trust because they know that's not true. So you instantly lowered your status in their mind. You've lost trust. Now their guard's up. So when you ask questions, they're going to give you vague, generalized, surface level answers. And then I want to think objection over at the end.
Right.
It's bad. But hey, I always say, what's the biggest problem in sales? The biggest problem is the problem that you don't know you have. Because if you don't know what your problems are, you have no idea how to fix them. And I think most salespeople just accept that selling is a numbers game. I'm going to go through the motions. And they use these old school techniques. They just don't know what they don't know.
What do you think is the easiest way to gain trust and move into a direction to where you can see if the product or service that you have is a fit for that client?
Well, pretty much every industry, when you're talking to prospects, they have problems. Mm-hmm. So it's probably a good fit, more than likely, right? Unless you're selling like a $10 million solution to somebody that's homeless, right. Realistically, it's probably a good fit most of the time. But I'm going to give you an answer that probably most people would not understand why I would say this, but the biggest way for you to build trust in a sales conversation is how you use your tonality. No, I'm not kidding. It's not even the words you use. You ever read sales books where it says 93% of making the sale is by your nonverbal communication, your tonality, and your body language? Has anybody ever taught you specifically how to use your tone to do that? No. Nobody teaches it, right? I actually learned tonality from like acting instructors because after a couple of years, I'd read that in books and I'd get so frustrated because I'm like, well, I'm buying all these programs, but nobody teaches me what that means. It's like they just copy and paste it from a book and keep reprinting it in a new book. So I wanted to learn because who's like your favorite actor or actress?
It's hard. I don't really watch movies.
Just give me anybody. Just give me somebody you know.
Tom Cruise.
Okay, Tom Cruise, great. I love Tom Cruise. He's good. Mission Impossible. So everything that Tom Cruise pretty much says and does in the movies is 100% what? Scripted. Mm-hmm. Does it sound scripted?
No.
It sounds completely natural. Do you know why? Because he knows how to use his tone to shift different emotional drivers in your brain to keep you engaged in that movie. His body language is tonality, right? Facial expressions. I always say your facial expressions are the remote control to your tone. Because, there's certain questions in certain contexts where I might want to use a confused tone. Now, a lot of people are like, well, Jeremy, you can't be confused. You got to sound like the expert. I'm not saying when you're going over your product or service, like, oh, I don't know how it works. Like, I don't mean like that. But let's say that, you're, credit repair and you're like, oh, yeah, man, geez, not having my, filing that bankruptcy 7 years ago has really caused a lot of tension in my family. Hold on. How do you mean by tension? That's a confused tone.
Right.
See, I repeat that: emotional tension, confused tone. So what your brain does when I do that in a confused tone is basically, you don't even know what's happening, but your brain basically is saying, oh, he didn't understand what I meant by tension. I need to clarify that. And when you clarify that, that means you start to go below the surface and you emotionally start to feel that pain.
Right.
If I didn't use a confused tone, it wouldn't trigger you to react that way. If I'm like, oh, what do you mean by tension, man? Well, I just have some issues and blah, blah, blah. Oh, tension? And just watch. So that confused tone triggers
They
that.
start to relive through the pain, and then they're looking forward to, your response to that.
Well, yeah, because what's the biggest emotional driver in a human being that causes them to want to change?
Pain?
Pain or the fear of future pain?
Fear of future pain.
So if we can't get the prospect to relive pain or have a fear of what could happen with pain, they don't feel any need to change. And if they don't feel any need to change, they don't buy from you. That's when you get lots of objections because they have uncertainty. They don't relive the pain. And so many salespeople ask surface level questions, or they don't know how to use their tone, so the prospect has their guard up, right? And they stay surface level and they never relive pain. And that's why you get objections, because you can't help them relive pain. You help them relive pain, and then you get them to see what the future looks like once the problems are solved. It's pretty easy to make sales.
Yeah. So I was a real estate agent in Beverly Hills from 2009 to 2019.
That's the second biggest industry we train now.
Yeah.
Big industry for us, yeah.
Yeah, and the most successful people that close the most sales would probably speak the least. They would talk the least. They would be the most calm. They would ask the most questions when it made sense.
Do you know why that makes sense? Because if you think about any expert or authority figure in the world, they don't have to sit there and try to convince you, right? They're more collective, they're more calm, they're more relaxed because they don't need you. They're detached. So many salespeople are so attached to the need of the sale. It comes out in your tonality, it comes out in your body language, and it triggers fight or flight mode in the prospect's brain. You ever heard of fight or flight mode, right?
Yeah.
So how does that happen? How does somebody go into fight or flight mode? I always find this interesting because in sales, you're like, oh, fight or flight mode, but nobody understands what causes it, right? It's actually the salesperson that causes it. What causes it, typically within the first 5 to 12 seconds of any conversation you're going to be in-person sales, virtual, on the phone, it doesn't matter, B2B, B2C, your prospects are picking up on social cues from you based on your tone and body language that they can see you and what you're saying that trigger their brain to react in one of two ways. So if you come across aggressive, now what I mean by aggressive is you're really excited, really enthusiastic, right? Everybody's like, you'll be really excited about your product. I agree. Keep it to yourself, though. Just because you're excited about your product doesn't mean a prospect is going to be excited about it, right? Because they know you're trying to sell them. So if you come across too excited, if you come across needy, you ever, when you're in sales, you could feel like when you need, the prospect can feel 10 times more than you, right? Because it comes out in your tone and your body language. And if you come across attached, and you don't understand the right questions, you don't understand how to use your tone to get them to let their guard down, what causes it causes fight or flight mode where they try to get rid of you. Like, oh, well, we're good. We're not interested. Or, hey, enough with the question. Just tell me how much it's going to cost. I'll tell you if I'm interested. That's a trigger reaction based off you, the salesperson, not the prospect. But, with any PQ, what we train our methodology, neuro-emotional persuasion questioning with the tonality, we're going to teach you how to come across more neutral, especially in the beginning, more unbiased. You're not quite sure you can help you. You'll have to know more. You're not saying that, but that's how you're coming across, okay? You come across more, let's say collective, more, still assertive, not boring. You're still assertive, like an expert does. And especially when you come across detached, you understand the questions, the tone, it causes their brain to become curious enough where they let their guard down and they become open to actually talking to you. So it's just it's literally you can make or break a sale within the first 10 seconds because if you trigger sales resistance and the wall comes up, it's hard to retreat from that. I'd rather come in and get them to let their guard down immediately because then they start to become more open. There's more trust there if you can get their guard down.
What do you find easier? Is it easier to sell a lower ticket product or a higher ticket product, or it really doesn't matter? It all just comes down to the training of the salesperson.
I don't think it matters at all. Yeah. I mean, we train 161 different industries. There's only 163 industries in the world. It's Forbes just came out. They come out with how many industries there are per year. There's usually one or two that changes every year. there's subcategories of each one. Like home improvement's a big industry for us. It's like the 5th or 6th largest we train. But in home improvement, that's like doors, windows, siding, awnings, sheds, tile, countertops, cabinets,
Right.
could be showers, it's just all over the place. I don't think it, I mean, we duplicate in every industry we're in.
Got it. So you
Small
work,
ticket, big ticket, doesn't matter.
and it's basically the same type of sales process.
I mean, we have some companies that sell $50 million solutions all the way down to some companies that sell $25 solutions. It's all the same.
How's AI impacting sales? Or you think they're enhancing sales, or you think it's going to change?
A couple things with AI. I think it's going to benefit salespeople and consumers, but I don't think it's going to do what a lot of people are doing. Like, oh, we're not going to need salespeople. It's all going to be sold with AI. I hate to tell you this. As soon as the first customer buys anything and says, I got manipulated by that robot, and complains, the FTC is going to come in and regulate that so much. There's just no way. I think it might replace like small stuff, like small sales. I don't even think it'll do that, because I think the FTC, I mean, just think about it. They start getting complaints. I was manipulated by that robot, but I mean, it's gonna get so regulated.
Yeah.
And I think people are gonna be like, are you a robot or are you a real person? I think people are gonna want to talk to real people.
Yeah.
I really do. So I don't think it's gonna do that much. I actually think it's really good. I think it will enhance sales. I don't see it. It can't replace it.
No, I don't think it's going to replace it. I think it definitely will probably enhance the entire sales process to, qualify clients better.
But everybody keeps forgetting about the FTC. I mean, can you imagine a consumer? I was manipulated by that robot. I lost 10 grand or whatever. You know how hard the FTC is going to come down on that?
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way. I don't think a lot of people don't think about that. It's going to get regulated.
What do you think some of the best industries are right now to be in sales?
It's a hard one for us because we're pretty much in every industry, but because we have salespeople that make tons. I mean, we have salespeople that make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, 7 figures a year in tons of industries. So it's a hard thing to say, like, oh, if you're in this industry, because the funny thing is, we have a bunch of these Facebook groups all over, and a lot of our clients will post testimonials in them, right? And some of them are free Facebook groups that has 100,000 plus in there, and a client will post testimony like, oh, NEPQ, I've made triple the income this year, or whatever they say. I've tripled my sales or whatever. And the first question people ask, like, what industry are you in? Because they think it's the industry. But the problem is they'll go to that industry and they won't succeed.
They'll fail.
It's not the industry. It's the salesperson. It's your sales ability. It's your skill level. So many salespeople jump around thinking that it's just the industry. Oh, the product will be easier to sell. Hate to tell you this, every product or service or anything that you sell will have good and bad. There'll be objections. There's no like everybody's going to be a laydown. You can make more prospects laydowns by getting much better at sales, where you prevent a lot of objections from happening. But big industries we train in like the top 10 in no order to this because they change all the time. Life insurance is a huge industry for us. We train hundreds of thousands in that space. Real estate, huge industry. I think it's the second largest we train now. That's real estate agents, residential, commercial, and investors that call distressed properties. That's kind of all one category. Home improvement, huge industry for us. Solar's huge industry for us. SaaS is a huge industry. Cybersecurity, medical device. What I'm probably missing out more of our top 10, but those are really big industries for us. But it's crazy. Like SaaS just became like a top 5-6 industry for us in the last like 8 months. I have no idea. It just randomly happens. 4 or 5 years ago when we first started, real estate agents wasn't that big, and then like the last couple of years it got really big for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just happens.
Yeah. How has social media impacted your business?
Big time for us. Like I didn't even have an Instagram account until 2 years ago. I had zero. I didn't even have my daughter came, was like, hey Dad, you should get an IG account. I'm like, what's IG? She's like, Instagram. I'm like, oh, Instagram. Yeah. Because the first 2 years we were just doing ads on Facebook, and that's it. And we had Facebook groups. And so I got on Instagram. I think it was November. So it's been like about 14 months. I did my first reel in January.
Wow.
2 years ago. I had 0 followers. Now we have like 650,000 maybe, or 40,000 on IG alone. And pretty much those have all come from reels. So we do 5 reels a day on Instagram times 7 days a week. So what is that? 140 reels a month just on IG. Do 140 reels a month on TikTok. I didn't even have a TikTok account until about a year ago. We do, I think, 3 or 4 YouTube shorts a day now, and 2 long form videos on YouTube now. We just started that like 4 months ago. And we're big on Facebook. We do a lot on Facebook. We do 5 reels a day on Facebook as well. And then we do 2 or 3 a day on LinkedIn. Yeah, so we dominate on IG and Facebook. Those are our 2 biggest platforms. Supposedly, we're the largest sales training company in the world on those platforms. I could be wrong. I don't know, but we dominate on those platforms. Like what we do is anybody that watches one of our reels more than 30 seconds will get retargeted everywhere. Facebook, IG, you'll start seeing stuff on YouTube. So if you start following me on reels and stuff like that, you'll start seeing our ads pretty much everywhere.
Yeah. Same thing happens with Pace. We follow each other. He came on the pod a little while ago.
Oh, okay.
And
I'm an investor with Pace.
Oh, cool.
Short-term lender. I love Pace. He's there in Phoenix too.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
Good guy.
He's got a great company.
He texted me a couple of days ago, and I was like, I'm seeing your ads everywhere. He started laughing.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Because you can't get away from.
We got to get a picture at this. We'll send it to Pace.
Cool.
I love Pace. Yeah.
Yeah. So Facebook was your main anchor.
That's where we started. Facebook ads, and then we got into IG and stuff. Facebook and IG are big. We've got a lot of clients from LinkedIn too. We do a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, more company clients. Yeah, it's good. And then we get some on TikTok. We don't do as much on TikTok. I think I only have like 110,000 followers on TikTok. We just haven't done much with it. And now we're starting to really focus on YouTube. Yeah.
Cool. What does your sales process look like? After they watch your reel, they get retargeted on, let's say,
we
Facebook.
Have so many different ways that leads come in, multiple avenues. So it could be, we have, I think we have about 5 SLO offers now, self-liquidating offers now. We have like NPQ Black Book of Questions. We have NPQ Black Book of Insurance Questions, NPQ Black Book of Solar Questions, and we target different industries. And we have like, the top 50 objections manual. And those are, they might see an ad and they pay $27 for it or whatever. And then then they buy right after that, it takes them into an upsell page and they buy something else for 50 or 100 or whatever. And then those leads will get reached out by our outbound team. And we have some people of our outbound team. We have 3 levels of salespeople in our organization. Like outbound, let's say B team, they're calling them, having like a 10-minute conversation, booking them in with one of our account managers. That's our inbound team.
So we have to buy a $27 offer. They'll get a sales call.
Yeah, we get like 5,000 to 6,000 buyer leads just a month. People on average spend about $80 to $150 before we even talk to them, right? So we get thousands of those. We have, we probably get about 45,000 leads a month, and then usually about 15 to 20% of those are buyer leads, right? So the outbound team is going to focus on the buyer leads first, and what they do is they'll call outbound team B, let's say, we'll call them 10-minute conversation, see what they're looking for, then book them in with like inbound team, which would be like account managers. Then we have our outbound A team that mainly focuses on the buyer leads. They'll call them 10-minute conversation, book them in with themselves, right? And they're the ones that actually make those sales. And then we have our inbound team that takes the appointments as well.
Got it.
And we have some of our salespeople only have company leads, but organizations looking for sales training for their companies. And then other salespeople on our team only talk to individual salespeople who want to get in our sales training courses to sell more of whatever they sell.
Got it. So they'll have someone on your team, like let's say, for example, they're an individual salesperson. Mm-hmm. Then they might maybe join some type of virtual group where they get training once a week or...
Yeah, and then we have other ads that just route them into one of our Facebook groups. And when they get in the Facebook groups, they see me go live 2 or 3 times a week. They get different CTAs that they'll get into. And then we have virtual 5-day training challenges once every quarter. We have a big one next week. We usually get about 25,000 people to register on each one of those. 30% will show up. And then others that don't, they just come in our ecosystem, right? And they'll eventually get into sales training somehow. So those are different ways. There's probably a lot more to that.
Yeah.
Sometimes when I get on this podcast and people ask me questions, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not involved in any of that because I'm like I'm removed from the business. I don't run the business. I don't do anything. I'm technically the chief creative officer, the founder, but I focus on creating new products, fulfillment, those type of things. So I work with our fulfillment team. We have a VP of fulfillment, VP director of fulfillment, and we have accountability coaches. We have all of our sales trainers, and I create new products all the time.
So when you first started running your ads, were you going basically all in on ads, or were you just like, I'm gonna
all in on ads? I didn't have any social media presence at all. Zero.
No, I mean like where you're basically backing up the truck. You're just basically dumping everything into ads.
Yeah.
You
For
just
sure.
continue to put more in every single month.
Yeah. I mean, the cool thing about us is we get about what is it? What do they call it? What is it? Our ROAS? Is that what they call it? I don't know all the marketing terms.
Return on ad spend.
Our marketing team gets, from what they're saying, like a 10 to 12 ROAS on everything we do.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is because we only retarget people who watch our reels. So our average client watches me on social media 2 months before they get into our sales training. So by the time they get there, they've seen 12 YouTube videos. They've probably seen 80 reels. They might have, so they already kind of know, like they're already getting results from the free stuff, right? They're like, oh, wow, this worked really well. I can't believe, I didn't think that'd work, but it worked. Maybe I should get all the sales training, like, because the reels we just keep very basic, right?
Yeah.
But they still get salespeople results more than what they're doing now. We get thousands of testimonials just from free content, let alone our clients, So that's good. So they already know it works kind of before they even book in with us. So they're just kind of want to know more details and which training program they should get in, and just depends on what type of funding they have and stuff like that.
Do you help people that are business owners that want to grow on social media, that need to grow their sales?
We're getting a lot of companies that are coming to us about that. It's not we're a sales training company, right?
Right.
We're not like a social media
Correct.
We have people that come to us for that, but it's not like our core business model. So we usually give them to people that know how to do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not going to have somebody buy. I mean, every once in a while somebody will be like, hey, you're an influencer. I'm like, I'm not an influencer. Like, we're a sales training company. I hate that word because I'm like, yeah, we have a social media profile. I'm not an influencer. Like, we're a sales training company. And I got lots of friends that are great influencers, but we look at ourselves like a sales training company. I mean, we've got, we have a couple of Fortune 100 clients, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, all the way down to small businesses that sell anything to individual salespeople that sell anything. So we're a sales training company.
Are there any influencers that you think have it dialed in terms of sales process, the way in which they communicate?
I got a good friend named Tommy Mello. You ever heard Tommy Mello?
Garage guy.
Yeah, he's good. Yeah,
he's
good.
He's
there in, close by in Scottsdale. Become really good friends with him. I think he's got a really good process dialed in. He's legit. He sold half of his company for, I don't know, 250, 300 million or whatever. He's in home services. That's a big industry for us as well. He's A1 Garage.
Yep.
I think he's got it dialed in. There's so many good people out there. Pace, obviously. I mean, Pace is like crushing it, I love his model because he brings people in to his coaching programs, and then they all bring deals to him for real estate that he splits with them 50-50. I'm like, dude, that's the best business model ever.
Yeah.
You literally bring everybody in for for cost if you wanted to, for your training programs, just so they can give you deals on the back end and you make hundreds of millions of dollars a year. It's like the best business model ever. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot more than that, but that's off the top of mind. Those two guys are crushing it.
Yeah. There's some of the best influencers are not what I always hear is
I obviously got Russell Brunson.
Yeah. Like there's two types of influencers, the entertainer and then the educator. And the educator, the one that can actually communicate their message the best, the one that makes all the money.
I think that's the best thing, because I see a lot of influencers and they're just like, they just talk about generalized stuff.
Right.
They're, they might have a real estate coaching business or whatever, but 75% of the reels are talking about me and my wife have this thing that we like to do on Sunday nights, or, I really like to eat this food or whatever. And their reels are just kind of like, they're just vague and generalized. And I'm like, if you watch my reels, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
How to sell more.
Yeah.
So they view me as like a sales training company. If I started talking about like my favorite foods all the time and just stuff that has nothing to do with sales, it's just, you don't get any business from that. To me, you're more of like an entertainer, but we're a company that, wants to drive revenue and have clients and customers, right? Not just entertain people to be famous,
Right. Do you ever think it's certain people have they have that personality where you can train them in sales and other people you just simply can't train them?
No, because like I said, selling is an acquired skill. Like, can anybody learn how to ask questions?
Right.
Can anybody learn how to use their tone? Can anybody learn how to prevent objections or help people overcome them? Yeah, it's just all acquired skill. So it doesn't matter if you're introverted, extroverted. I'm considered what's called an ambivert or whatever. It's like in the middle. I can go out on stage and, do a training for 9,000 people, not even really like think anything of it. and then I can go to dinner with 5 people and not say a word and just sit there, be introverted. I'm kind of like I'm weird. I don't know, but it doesn't matter your personality. Like that's the biggest myth that salespeople buy into, or people buy into like, oh, he's just a natural born salesperson. I'm like, hate to tell you, like asking the right questions at the right time with the right tonality and body language, nobody's born with those skills. You don't come out of your mother's womb with that. Like you acquire those skills. In fact, people that say, oh, he's got the gift of the gab, usually sell far less than people that are introverted, because you talk so much that you talk people out of buying, right? You're like, you just talk so much that people don't even listen to you because they feel like you're trying to sell them.
Yeah.
So usually with extroverts, we have to like slow them down where they stop talking so much, and they get much better at problem finding, questioning, and tonality.
What do you think is one of the most common reasons in which people hire you? Obviously to increase sales, but what is the biggest problem that they're currently facing usually?
I think the biggest problem in sales, like I said, is the problem that you don't know you have. So I think a lot of companies, what we find is a lot of companies when they bring us on to train all their salespeople, they're like, we really want you to focus on objections. And I'm like, well, we can, but that's like I can give you the Band-Aid, but what if we taught your salespeople how to prevent most of the objections from happening in your prospect's mind? And they're like, what? I'm like, well, yeah, objections are triggered reactions based off your salespeople. You're triggering uncertainty in their mind, which causes them to give you objections. So we can teach you how to overcome objections because you're still going to get objections. But if we can help reduce your salespeople objections by 50 to 70%, it's much easier to sell, right? So we're more focused on objection prevention. And that's by building a gap from where the prospect is to where they want to be. And you're the facilitator in that process, right? What builds a gap? The only thing that's going to build a gap in their mind, because you can't tell them what their situation is. You can't tell them what their problems are. That goes in one ear out the other, right? You're biased. You're the salesperson. Your questions that you ask and how you ask them, like specifically your tone, and getting them to internalize what you're asking by slowing down the questions, verbal pacing, verbal pausing, causes the prospect to build the gap in their own mind. That's self-persuasion. That's where we talk about help them relive the pain and feel the fear of future pain. That causes them to feel urgency in their mind that they need to do something now, not keep pushing it down the road. So most companies think it's objections they need to work on, but it's actually just the conversation that is causing the objections. Because if we can change the conversation, we change the outcome at the end, and we just drastically reduce even getting objections. And then, and when you build the gap, when you build that gap and they feel that urgency, they have tons of trust for you because they look at you as like the expert. And so even if they have a concern, it's way easier to help them overcome it than try to fight them on it. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So let's say you have a client that, they want to buy the product or service that you have to sell, but they genuinely do want to speak with their wife, or they genuinely do want to speak to their husband. And they say, I have to speak to, my wife.
Yeah. First of all, I would do a few things first. So let's say if it's credit repair. So I would simply say, yeah, that's not a problem. How does your wife feel about you getting your credit repair so you guys can get that house? See, I'm repeating back the end result of what credit repair does for them, right? Oh, she would definitely want it's not like he's going to be like, nope, she wouldn't want me to get my credit repair to get her dream house. Like they're not going to say that, right? But if I'm like, how does she feel about getting your or how does she feel about credit repair? She's like, oh, I don't know. I got to talk to her about it. But if I repeat back the end result, how does your wife feel about you getting your credit up to 750 so you can get her that house? Oh yeah, I think she'd want it. Well, I guess my concern for you is what happens if you go to her and she doesn't want you to get the funding to get your credit repair. How are you guys going to be able to get that house? See, I've created a problem in his mind now. How are you going to be able to do that without what I'm doing for you, right? And so that gets them thinking. Now, if I still can't help them overcome that, I'm comfortable with letting them go back and talk with them and booking the next day, because I know 9 times out of 10 that they're going to show up because I've created such a big gap that they're going to buy anyways. But I position it right. Or I'm like, well, what are you going to do if you go to her and she doesn't want to get you the funding? Like, what are you going to say? And then I kind of coach them through that process.
Right.
Rather than going through, hey, honey, I think we should get our credit repair. It's going to be $8,000. That's different than like, honey, like I really want to get this house for you because I know we need more bedrooms and everything, but man, our credit, it's going to take us like 7-8 years, but there's an opportunity, where we can get our credit repaired here in about 3 months, and we might be able to get that house in 4 months. That's completely different. Now she's like, oh, end result, the cost, she's more focused on the end result rather than the cost. Whereas if I don't coach them through what to do, he might go to her and just like, hey, it's going to be $8,000. She's like, we can't afford it. Then it's over. But if you focus more on the end result, getting her into the house from the credit repair, now she's like results-based thinking rather than price-based thinking.
Right.
It's a big difference.
And so when you call to follow up, you never call. The big mistake I think a lot of people make is what? Hey, I'm calling to follow up.
Well, it's just the words. How many emails do you get from vendors like, hey, I'm just following up. I'm just checking in.
I never respond
What
to
do
any
you
of them.
automatically think when you hear those words?
Idiot.
Salesperson trying
Right.
to sell me something. So I just want to relanguage it. I'm not saying you don't follow. You obviously call them back. You just want to avoid the words follow up. Hey, I'm just checking in. I'm just following up because that's just like, it's like, how can I explain it to you? It's like maybe being in the military, and I have been in the military, so I don't know this, but I've got friends that have told me this. You've served overseas, you're in some type of war, you heard gunshots, people dying, and let's say you're walking down the street and a gunshot goes off, you react, right? It's like something happens to your brain. Well, consumers react too to words that salespeople always use. So if they hear words that salespeople always use, they view you like all other salespeople. And how are salespeople viewed in society at large? Lower status, right? You might make $500,000 a year as a salesperson, but grandma thinks you still need to get a real job because she views you as a lower. You're in sales, right? So I don't want to trigger that reaction based off those words. So I might, typically when we train companies and salespeople how to like follow up, it's really interesting how we do this, but we'll have them get like papers in their hand. It's like a pattern up if they're on the phone, right? Because you're pretty much, let's say they didn't buy, something happened, they didn't buy, and then 2 months later you're calling them back. Like let's say just credit repair, like a consumer. So I might take some papers and be like, hello, this is John. Hey, it's Jeremy Miner with XYZ. I think we talked like 3-4 months ago. You were looking at, ways to like get your credit score up to 750 so you could get I think you were talking about some home for your wife. Whatever happened to that? Did you guys end up giving up on getting your credit repair, or what actually happened? Like you're confused. It's just slowing down, and I'm like crinkling papers at the same time so they can hear that. It's a pattern interrupt. That's all it is. Little things like that make all the difference if they're going to stay on the phone with you or not. Or if they're going to be like, no, we got that fixed, when they didn't, right? They just say that, they react based on how you're coming across. Like, hey, John, I'm just following up with you about your credit repair. Like, oh yeah, we're good. It's an instant, they're just reacting to you. They're not even really hearing you. They're just reacting. It's like when a telemarketer calls you, have you ever noticed, like, you're like, oh, not interested. And then you're like, oh, I don't even know what they were saying. I don't even know what they were selling. Yeah. It's because of their tonality. They sound like a salesperson. So you're going into fight or flight mode, and it's your survival part of your brain. So I'll give you an example. Let's say that you're walking into a grocery store, you're outside, and you hear like somebody yelling. You instantly, what happens? There's 3 parts of your brain. You've got your survival part of your brain, which a lot of people call it the reptilian part of the brain. You got the midbrain, and then you've got the neocortex, right, which is your problem-solving part of the brain. So when you hear that voice, it goes right into your survival brain first. You react like, oh, am I safe?
Yeah.
You didn't even hear the words that lady said. You just heard her tone. Instantly, then it goes into your midbrain, and you start to like, what did she say? Like the words. And then your neocortex says, oh, she's just yelling at her son to be careful crossing the street. That happens in like 1.5 seconds. Right? But that's that you react first from your survival brain based on the tone, not the words.
Right. Yeah, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah. The brain science stuff, crazy.
Do you believe that what we're walking into over the next year or so is going to be that great wealth transfer?
I think it's already happening, isn't it? Like even with COVID. I mean, I'm not, I don't understand this probably like you do. I know you talk a lot about it, which I think is brilliant. It's not my expertise, but I think there's been a big wealth transfer going on for probably a couple of decades for sure.
Yeah, I mean,
the wealthier keep getting wealthier, the poorer keep getting poorer.
I believe it's like it started It started in 2008, even before that,
Yeah.
but kind of ramped up 2020.
Yeah.
And then now I believe like the next year and a half, maybe 2 years.
What's caused you to believe that? Just so I understand.
What I believe is happening right now is we're in an inflationary environment where the middle class is getting squeezed.
Yeah.
Insurance and taxes are continuing to rise.
Yeah.
Wages are softening.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are leveraged. They have properties in which they thought they could have afforded at lower interest rates. People can't refinance.
Yeah.
And so what's happening is people are sitting in an environment in which, as inflation gets worse, it's making it harder and harder and harder for them.
Interesting.
And so what I believe is going to happen is wealthy people that are either wealthy now or on their way to becoming wealthy are going to be able to go out there and start to buy off assets because less people are going to be able to go out there and buy homes.
Well, like was it Blackstone or BlackRock that's buying up all the homes right now? Is it BlackRock or Blackstone? I can't remember. BlackRock.
Kind of a collection of the two, but Blackstone, I mean, they're always buying everything.
They're buying all the homes up, right? Yeah.
But a lot of investors are doing the same thing. A lot of people on social media are doing the same thing. But I believe what's going to happen is probably the next couple of years, we're going to see a lot more people needing to sell versus a lot less people that can actually afford to buy.
That's valid. Yeah. So you want to take part of the wealth transfer, you need to acquire much more advanced ability to communicate, right? Because if you learn how to communicate, if you learn how to sell the right way, everything becomes really easy in your life. You don't know how to communicate, it becomes hard. Got to play the numbers game. Sounds hard.
Is that a lot of what everyone comes to you believing? You mentioned that kind of before.
I mean, most salespeople have been trained to think that sales is a numbers game. And I think sales managers and companies do that to make them feel better, like going through all that rejection. But they're going through all the rejection based on their skill level. They don't have a skill. They're not being taught the right skills. They're taught skills that work against human behavior rather than work with it, right? So we're going to train them how to get the prospect to do all the work. See, most salespeople have been taught that you got to do all the work. You got to do all the convincing. You got to overcome their objections. You've got to persuade them. You've got to push and pressure them. But that's only gotten you to where you're at. Nothing more. You're never going to get to 3-4 levels up selling that way. It's not like you're going to work double the hours. You already work 10 hours a day. You're going to work 20 hours a day. Does that make sense? So what we do is we teach you how to get the prospect to do all the work. Because after all, who's the one that has the problems? The prospect, not you. They're the ones that have the problems. They need you more than you need them, right? And so we're going to teach you how to get the prospect to sell themselves. We're going to teach you how to get the prospect to overcome their own concerns, because their concerns are one holding them back from getting what they want. And we're going to teach the company or salespeople how to get the prospects to pull you in. And selling just makes you a lot more happy. You don't go into a boxing match every day or feel anxiety or I made the sale, but I pressured them so much they might cancel tomorrow. We just don't. I mean, we've had like solar companies, for example, and roofing companies that would go out the door to door or even virtual, and every sale they make, half of them would cancel before they got installed. Solar, the average install takes a couple months sometimes. Half of them would cancel. We've gone into companies and got that 50% cancellation rate down under 10%. But it's because we teach them how to get the prospect to persuade themselves, where it's their idea, where they think, oh man, I'd be crazy not to get solar. And they just don't cancel because they persuaded themselves.
Do you think that's one of the main key components of a good salesperson is being calm, controlled over their voice?
The greatest salespeople in the world, the prospect doesn't even feel like they're on a sales call. They just feel like they're in a normal conversation. The moment prospects start saying, oh, you could sell anything to anybody. You could sell ice to Eskimo. Oh, you're good. Is the moment they're not buying. Yeah. Because they feel like they're sold.
Yeah.
Or you could sell anything to anybody. I had a few people that did that in my career. And I remember when it happened, I mean, because it's like the kiss of death. I'm like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? But I remember this one guy said that. He's like, oh man, he's like, you're good. You're a great salesperson. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm not that good at all. Like those other guys, those are crazy salespeople. It's just a pattern interrupt, And just stuff like that, like, oh, I'm not that cool. I wish I could be like those sales guys over there. Just pattern interrupt,
right?
Trying to disarm them.
Do you usually close the sale when they say that, or do you think that's usually the point where they're going to try to pivot away?
I only had that happen to me a few times in my whole sales career, because understanding human behavior, I knew how to make it so conversational where the prospect didn't feel like they were being sold. They feel like they're almost selling me, if that makes sense. So we train companies and salespeople how to pretty much get the prospect to thank you for you letting them pay you to solve their problems and get them where they want to be. That's completely different than you like pressuring. And I'm not saying you get to them like, well, let me know if you're interested. Email me back. You're not going to make any sales that way either. But when you build such a big gap where they have so much internal tension of reliving pain and fearing the fear of future pain, like they've sold themselves. Like it's over. Like we've taken some companies like in B2B sales that had like year sales cycles or year and a half and chopped that down 70%, where their sales cycle went from 9 months to 3 months. I mean, imagine the revenue doing it that way, and it's funny because so many people in B2B sales are like, oh, the sales cycles are so long. It's like, well, maybe the question you should ask is, Jeremy, I just don't know how to create urgency in my prospect's mind to get them to want to change now and not keep pushing down the road. That's a question you should be asking, because we've even internally in 7th Level, we've had, Fortune 1,000 companies and higher that they were wiring in funds within like 2 meetings in 2 weeks. And it went through legal too. Like they pushed it through legal. Like, hey, we got to get this done now. We're losing millions of dollars a month. Like, get this done now. But most sales training companies, it might take them 6 months to a year and a half to get that deal. We can get it done within 30 days because we know how to trigger urgency in their mind to want to change now instead of pushing it down the road. And most salespeople just haven't learned how to do that yet. But that's an acquired skill as well. You just learn how to do that.
What do you think? A lot of people have a conversation of what's more important, sales or marketing?
I mean, I think they're both important, but if I had to pick, I would say sales, because we train companies how to cold call. They don't need any marketing for that. We've got companies that only cold call that do millions of dollars a month, just cold calling.
Yeah, a lot of people say cold calling's dead. Obviously, that's not
It's
true.
dead if you don't know how to do it. If you don't know the right words to use, if you don't know how to use your tonality, and you focus on the numbers game. Hey, is John there? Hey, John, yeah, Jeremy Miner from XYZ company. Hey, the reason why I was calling you was, click.
Right.
Yeah, you sound like that, like every salesperson does that cold calls them every day. You're going to struggle. But if you learn how to trigger curiosity and engagement, it's pretty, I mean, it's not the easiest thing, but we have companies that do it that make millions of dollars a month.
Yeah.
And they don't do any marketing.
Cool.
So there you go.
Jeremy Miner.
Thanks for having me on, man.
Yeah, of course. If you're interested in learning about sales, feel free to click the link in the description below the video, and you can find his social media handles. And pleasure.
And we've got, can I grab that book over there? I'll show, Yash, can you throw me that book? So if they want to learn anything about us or anything, we've got, they're welcome to get, and I was going to bring this book, I'm going to sign it to you. Not that I'm that cool, but they're welcome to go to barnesandnoble.com, get our Barnes & Noble bestseller, Amazon bestseller, and Wall Street Journal bestseller. It's called A New Model of Selling to an Unsellable Generation. Jerry Acuff is a co-author. Good friend of mine, owns a very successful consulting business on the East Coast. So they're welcome to get that book. Sales books always ticked me off in the beginning because I'd read a book and it was just like all theory, and it was just like they'd say the same theory like 17 times in the book, and I'd walk away, I'm like, I didn't learn anything, right? So when we wrote this book, we wanted to put like tactical skills in here, like what questions to ask, why you're asking them, like understanding the psychology behind why certain questions work compared to other questions, right? Now, you're not going to learn advanced tonality or advanced body language from a book because you're reading words, but this is a good start. So if they want to get that book, go to barnesandnoble.com. And if they want to learn anything about us, they can just, we got lots of Facebook groups. They can join one of the free ones, take some nibbles, some free content. Sales Revolution, they can join that on Facebook. They can just go in their search bar on Facebook and go to Sales Revolution. And if they ever want more advanced training like our clients, they can just hit us up.
Cool.
Thanks for having me on your show, brother.
You got it, my man.